very severe, but the timing of the pass from Jalabert, there's the footwork, there's the draw and play, there's the players' emotions, and there's that try.
Right. Good.
Fakatawa gets it away from the tackle. Medak feeds Penot, and here's Dupont! France, loving life in Japan!
Making it to 3 finals and 4 semi-finals, France is the greatest nation to have never won the World Cup. But how could this have happened?
Away it goes to Trendit Rouzerie. Dusatoir, the captain!
Les Bleus are no strangers to World Cup heartache. Just as we saw in October 23, a shattering 1-point loss on home soil. It was as open a World Cup as we've seen, with France tipped to finally break the duck. France had the best player in the world, Antoine Dupont, plus superstars like Baillet, Antamac, Ramos and Damien Penaud, with a smattering of giant Pacific Islanders up front, arguably the best French squad of all time.
It's the 8 to the 7, it could have gone to the 6, the back row are rampant, France are rampant, England are clueless.
Now France kicked off the tournament in style, coming from behind as Ramos kicked the French to a historic win over the mighty All Blacks. It must be noted, the ABs had never lost a pool match and the French loved taking that scalp so early on. They cruised the pool, winning all 4 games, but the route to the final was a nasty one. It was Jacques Nienaber's Springboks up next in the quarters. It doesn't get tougher than this, man. This France team though was more than a match for the Boks, especially at home. In one of the greatest World Cup games, the Boks triumphed 29-28, shooting down French dreams of taking Webb Ellis home. A 7-try thriller, and the fact that it was just a single point added salt to the French wounds. Just think what could have been if lightning-quick Colby hadn't charged down the Ramos conversion attempt. France was devastated. A feeling they know only too well. Deja vu, perhaps? Now, did you know that just 5 nations have reached the World Cup final, yet only one has never tasted glory? So, what on earth has gone wrong for Les Bleus? Well, stick with us and we'll get into it. Now, before we go any further, please like, subscribe and share. It really helps out our channel. The tale of World Cup final woes begins in 1987, at the very first World Cup hosted by Australia and New Zealand. France travelled to the tournament as the 5 Nations Grand Slam champions. No easy feat, as you well know. This squad contained some of the greatest names in French rugby history and a mesmeric back line. Remember the try from the end of the world? Blanco at fullback, Salah in the centre and Berbizier at scrum half. In the pool stage, they eked out a tight draw against the Scots before hammering Romania and Zimbabwe to reach the quarters against a rugged Fiji side. It was a closely contested game, with fly-half Guy Laporte proving to be the difference with his game management and pinpoint kicking. A 31-16 victory set up a semi-final against the Wallabies in Sydney, with Liner and Campisi at the peak of their powers. In what Rugby World magazine ranks as the 5th greatest World Cup game of all time, France beat the Wallabies in their own backyard, setting up an explosive final against the All Blacks. The resilient French fell behind 3 times but just kept coming. With Australia 24-21 up and seconds left in the game, they gave a silly penalty away and Cambero Barrow dispatched it. Fans awaited the final whistle to send the game into extra time. Philippe Sella made a crucial tackle. France won the ruck, and what came next was pure French genius.
Now they send it to Rodriguez. Charvet, tackled by Campisi. Berbizier. Look at this. Lagisquet, the fastest man on the field. Blanco's outside. Michael Liner couldn't pick it up. Rodriguez. Blanco for the corner. I think he's there.
Sadly for France, this would be their final great moment in that World Cup. They were roundly beaten by the All Blacks at Eden Park. The ABs were the favourites, but the French were psychologically spent from their semi-final exploits. France went home with pride, knowing that they had built a great foundation for future success, or so they thought. France's next chance to grab World Cup glory came in '99. Ahead of the tournament, they had finished in lowly 4th place in the 5 Nations, a worrying omen. Despite this, they began with straightforward wins against Namibia and Canada before a tricky matchup with Fiji. That final pool game showed a worrying lack of cohesion in the side, and referee Paddy O'Brien had a shocker of a match in favour of the French. So bad were his decisions that he apologised to Fiji in his 2004 memoirs, calling it the worst moment of his career. Now, after topping the group, they put on a solid display to beat the up-and-coming Argentina. This was largely down to emerging fly half Christophe Lamaison and informed wingers Philippe Benassal and Christophe Dominici. The back line was looking pretty dangerous. This was all well and good, but next up was the All Blacks, featuring the freight train and ballet shoes that was Jonah Lomu. The All Blacks had made mincemeat of the French just a couple of months before the World Cup, losing 54-7 in Wellington, and Les Bleus wanted revenge. They got exactly that, in yet another dramatic World Cup display by the ever-dangerous French side.
Back it comes. Lamaison chipped over and through. Dort is there for the try. Richard Dort scores again for France.
Losing 24-10 at the 46-minute mark, they looked to be heading back over the channel and back to the drawing board. Then, out of nowhere, they conjured up some of the best rugby ever seen at Twickenham to score 33 points to the All Blacks 7, winning 43-31. It was devastating for the ABs.
France have beaten the All Blacks, the biggest upset in the whole of Rugby World Cup history.
Hall of Famer Fabien Pelou later said, "Despite the fact we were losing, we still had the feeling that we could really do something against these players, against this team." Well, they pulled off the unthinkable, and onto the final Les Bleus would go to face an informed Wallabies. At the Millennium Stadium on November the 6th, they were again just 80 minutes away from the Holy Grail, but they'd have to beat the immense Wallabies to do so. In what was far from a classic final, against the backdrop of a miserable and cold Welsh sky, Australia proved triumphant. France never really got going. The back line was disrupted by wing forward Olivier Magnier's injury, and they couldn't live with the Wallabies' kicking game. An impotent France, jaded from the heroics against the ABs, lost 35-12, and yet another opportunity came and went. So close, yet so far, a theme that would continue to plague them in 2011. Now, ahead of the 2011 World Cup, France finished as runners-up in the Six Nations, a step down from their 2010 Grand Slam. 3 wins and 2 losses were far from ideal, but could they turn a poor Six Nations into good World Cup form as they had back in '99? The campaign began shakily. They won against minnows Canada and Japan before being roughed up and beaten by the All Blacks. Then came a shocking 19-14 defeat against Tonga, yet they managed to scrape through for the knockout stages. Few fans were confident, and we wouldn't be either. Now, ahead of a quarter-final versus England, things went from bad to worse. The squad staged a revolt against head coach Livremont, leaving the players to basically manage themselves through the knockout stages. Denied by the players at the time, but later confirmed by Hadanokui, who said, "It was our adventure. We had to free ourselves from his supervision." An uprising is hardly what you need ahead of a tough knockout match. Nonetheless, France again proved to be at their resilient best. They put on an outstanding display against England, exposing Martin Johnson's team's weaknesses in brutal style. England too were facing issues on and off the field, and the French were more than happy to take advantage. The French boys were getting their act together. Led by captain Dusautoir, the electric winger Claire, and the solid centre pairing of Rougerie and Mermoz, it was a side transformed. In the semis, it was a 1-point win over the Welsh, largely thanks to a red card for captain Sam Warburton that helped Les Bleus on their way. Their final opponent was the All Blacks at Eden Park in a repeat of the very first World Cup final 24 years earlier. The French wanted to set the record straight, and they made it clear from the get-go. The players set the aggressive tone by facing down the haka in a forward-marching V-shape before lining up. They could almost taste the sweetness of revenge. Down by 8 at half-time, France rallied in the second period with a try from Dusautoir, which Tranduc converted. It's game-on mode now. Then came France's moment. Minute 65, a penalty 48 metres out. Tranduc stepped up and missed it. I mean, can you believe this? As the ball sailed waywardly wide of the right-hand upright, heads dropped and the game fizzled out. France had blown it again. Post-match, there was plenty of criticism aimed at referee Joubert, and rightly so. The influential paper, the Sydney Morning Herald, accused the referee of ignoring offside play and breakdown indiscretions that should have cost the home team penalties. Regardless, France had now lost 3 World Cup finals. Be it bad refs, missed penalties, mutiny, or misfortune, they just haven't been able to get it done. Clutch Nation, this is bad news for the rest of the world. The French rugby team has a chip on their shoulder, be warned. This is the same France that is the last team to ever beat the All Blacks at their famous home ground, Eden Park, on July 3rd, 1994. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Now, looking at the current French squad, some are calling this the golden era of French rugby, with arguably their best side ever, under the guidance of accomplished coach Galthie. Galthie took the natural flair of the French and turbo boosted it. 48% of all their passes travel less than 5 meters, allowing the already fast-laid Bleus to be pacey and fluid. The inside short pass system aligns with the Minister of the Interior in Antoine Dupont. On the domestic scene, the top 14 and Pro D2 are hands down the best in the world, consistently demolishing all comers in the Champions Cup, and more translating into the Test arena. With the French Rugby Academy system, they've been churning out quality players, resulting in France under-20 dominating World Rugby with 4 consecutive finals appearances. Danger signs for rival teams in the next Rugby World Cup. With the upcoming Six Nations 2025 and France coming off a recent victory over a strong All Blacks, they're looking in fine form with a beast of a squad, speed in the backs like a pinball machine, and that 1,000 kilo plus forward pack. One thing is for certain, Fabien Galthié has his eyes on the 2027 RWC based on the young side he's picked for the important upcoming Six Nations. Allez le bleu! And we think Tim from Egg Chasers hits the nail on the head.
If anyone is going to take the crown in the Six Nations from Ireland, it's going to be this lot, isn't it? Fabien Galthié has named his French squad for the 2025 Six Nations, and it is absolutely stacked.
I think that sums it up nicely. As always, thanks for watching. Remember to leave your comments downstairs, please do subscribe, and stay tuned.